When an empath finally snaps, the moment light turns to shadow. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And for empaths, this truth carries a chilling weight because the moment you reach your breaking point, light can turn to shadow. But here's the question: will you let that moment consume you, or will you transform it into power? In today's video on spiritual wisdom, we'll uncover what happens when an empath finally snaps and how you can apply these lessons to your own life for greater strength, balance, and happiness. As you listen, I invite you to reflect. Have you ever felt your kindness pushed to the edge? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your story might be the one that helps someone else on their journey. 1. Jung's hidden warning. Carl Jung secretly recorded a frightening reality about empaths, a truth he described as a forbidden understanding of human consciousness. He observed that when empaths, those sensitive souls who spend their lives absorbing the pain and toxicity of others, reach the limits of what their hearts and minds can bear, something inside them shifts dramatically. It is not a simple breakdown, but a transformation where their light, once nurturing and healing, begins to twist into a shadow that even they cannot control. For years, empaths walk as silent guardians, carrying grief that does not belong to them, soaking in rage and sorrow that others discard, believing that spirituality demands endless giving. They convince themselves that their ability to absorb the wounds of the world is their purpose, their sacred role. Yet Jung warned that no vessel, however noble, can carry such weight forever. The soul of the empath begins to crack under pressure, and when it finally snaps, the shift is violent and irreversible. This is the moment where compassion becomes bitterness, patience becomes fury, and silence erupts with words as sharp as knives. Jung called it terrifying because it is not mere fatigue, it is a profound alteration of consciousness. The empath, who once brought healing, now channels rage. The heart that once absorbed pain begins to reflect it outward like fire. Spiritual awakening, in its truest form, is not always gentle or graceful. Sometimes it arrives in the form of destruction, when the old identity collapses and the empath is forced to reclaim the pieces of themselves they had sacrificed for too long. It is as if their soul, once like a clear ocean, becomes polluted by all the suffering they have absorbed. When too much darkness seeps in, the waters churn into a storm, unleashing waves powerful enough to destroy anything in their path. Jung feared this storm because it reveals the empath's hidden shadow, the part of them that no longer protects others but retaliates against the world with precision. Their light becomes a weapon, and their love, once pure, is laced with vengeance. In this state, they embody the very darkness they once sought to heal, not out of failure, but because they have been pushed beyond endurance. This transformation is both terrifying and paradoxical, for within it lies not only collapse, but also rebirth. The snapping of the empath signals the end of blind sacrifice and the beginning of fierce self-preservation. It is here that they awaken to a deeper spirituality, one that integrates shadow instead of denying it. They no longer see their purpose as carrying the burdens of others. Instead, they realize that true healing begins when they protect their own soul. This revelation is the hidden gift in Jung's warning. The empath snapping is not the end of their journey, but the emergence of sovereignty. They step into an authenticity that is no longer fragile, but balanced, forged by both light and shadow. They stop bleeding themselves dry for a world that never gave back, and they begin to wield their energy with intention, not sacrifice. Their spirituality is no longer about endless giving, but about living in wholeness, claiming their right to boundaries, power, and truth. And though the transformation may terrify them at first, it ultimately frees them, teaching that no human being, no matter how spiritual or compassionate, was ever meant to carry the suffering of the world alone. Are you ready to uncover Jung's hidden warning and embrace your true strength? If so, comment below, "I will awaken," to declare your commitment to this powerful journey of transformation. 2. The build-up to transformation. Years of sacrificing your own needs, of quietly absorbing the unspoken pain of others, and of becoming the place where everyone else's shadows are stored, eventually create a heavy reservoir deep within you, an invisible weight pressing against your soul. This is not weakness, and it is not failure. It is the silent preparation for transformation. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that is exactly what begins to happen when the empath reaches this hidden threshold. For so long, you may have thought your endless giving was the highest form of love. Yet your soul knows that giving without balance is not love at all, but slow erasure. And when the burden becomes too great, when your spirit can no longer contain what is not yours to carry, the breaking point arrives not as destruction, but as the first spark of spiritual awakening. A call to reclaim yourself and step into a deeper stage of spiritual development. For empaths, this breaking point often feels like snapping, but snapping does not mean cruelty or hardness. It is the moment when the light you have been projecting outward finally turns to meet the shadow within, and in doing so, awakens a fierce clarity. After years of carrying others, your soul rises and says, "No more." The floodgates open, like a river that has been dammed for too long, breaking its banks and carving new paths across the land. All the unspoken needs, ignored desires, and silenced boundaries surge forward, demanding to be recognized. What looks like anger is in truth the reclamation of self-respect. What feels like distance is the restoration of balance. And what the world might call selfishness is, in reality, the sacred act of honoring the flame within, so it may continue to shine. This transformation can be unsettling, because the empath often fears becoming cold or unkind. Yet what is happening is not the death of compassion, but its rebirth. You are learning that true compassion cannot exist when you are depleted, and that carrying the pain of the world is not the same as healing it. Jung understood that every light carries shadow, and every shadow carries light. And so the snapping is nothing more than the psyche's natural attempt to restore balance. This is where spirituality deepens. When you begin to see that self-sacrifice without boundaries is not holiness, but harm, and that protecting your own soul is the highest service you can offer to others. In this way, snapping becomes sacred, because it is the moment you stop confusing servitude with love and begin practicing authentic compassion. It is the moment when the empath finally realizes that boundaries are not walls, but gates that protect the sacred garden of the soul. From this point onward, you learn to give from fullness rather than depletion, from strength rather than exhaustion. The lesson is clear and timeless. Spiritual growth requires balance, and spirituality itself is not about losing yourself for others, but about bringing your whole self forward so that your love, your wisdom, and your light are real and sustainable. The value this journey offers you is profound. Your breaking point is not your end. It is your becoming. By embracing both light and shadow, you step into wholeness, and in that wholeness, you discover that self-respect and compassion are not enemies, but allies, guiding you toward the radiant, unshakable truth of your own spirit. 3. From light to shadow integration. At the breaking point, the empath's light does not disappear. It fuses with the shadow that has been waiting in silence, and together they create a self that is both deeply compassionate and fiercely aware of darkness. Carl Jung called this the empath's dark night of the soul, a passage where kindness is tested by reality and love must find its roots in strength rather than sacrifice. For years, you may have poured yourself out for others, believing that endless giving was a sign of intelligence and moral greatness. But Jung warned that true enlightenment does not come from clinging to light. It comes when you make the darkness conscious. Every empath knows the cost of carrying burdens that were never theirs to bear. You have likely felt the exhaustion of absorbing everyone else's pain, the quiet ache of sacrificing your well-being so that others could stand tall. Yet the more you suppress your own needs, the more powerful your hidden shadow becomes. The snapping point is when that shadow can no longer be denied, when it demands to be integrated, not as an enemy, but as a partner in your wholeness. Jung's spiritual wisdom shows us that the shadow holds our unclaimed boundaries, our suppressed power, and our unspoken truths. To reject it is to remain fractured. To embrace it is to finally become complete. This transformation is nothing less than alchemy of the soul. When the empath stops being only the giver and begins to embody both light and shadow, they move from silent martyr to wise guardian. No longer drained, no longer defined by sacrifice, they become a presence that can heal when healing is needed and protect when protection is necessary. Jung reminded us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. For the empath, fate shifts at this moment. Boundaries emerge, self-respect strengthens, and compassion itself becomes sharper and wiser because it is no longer unconditional surrender, but conscious choice. The shadow does not destroy compassion. It deepens it. It teaches the empath to say no without guilt, to preserve their soul with sacred self-respect, and to offer love from a place of strength rather than depletion. What once felt like weakness is revealed as balance, and what once felt like collapse is revealed as rebirth. This is the privilege Jung spoke of when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Becoming who you truly are means you no longer fear the parts of yourself the world finds uncomfortable. Instead, you learn that your shadow is the guardian of your deepest power. The empath who snaps is not broken. They are transformed. They are no longer the silent carrier of everyone's suffering, but the integrated being who knows the value of their light and the necessity of their darkness. This is the intelligence of spiritual wisdom. The realization that true awakening does not happen by denying one half of your nature, but by embracing both. In that union lies freedom, strength, and a love that is no longer fragile, but eternal. Do you feel the power of this truth? If you do, Write it with certainty in the comments. From light to shadow, I rise stronger. 4. The dark empath emerges. Transformed empaths gain what Carl Jung might call shadow empathy, a heightened spiritual intelligence that allows them to sense not only what could heal a person, but also what could dismantle them at the core of their psyche. This awakening emerges after years of carrying the burdens of others, absorbing wounds that were never theirs, and giving endlessly without reciprocity. When they reach the breaking point, they no longer embody only the light of compassion, but also the precision of shadow, becoming psychological shapeshifters who can navigate the dual forces of healing and destruction with unnerving clarity. Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And it is this integration of shadow into empathy that gives birth to a force both feared and revered. The dark empath is not simply a wounded healer turned bitter. Rather, they evolve into someone who understands the full spectrum of human consciousness, wielding both compassion and confrontation. They are capable of being the most profound healers, able to mend broken souls with extraordinary depth, yet also able to strip away illusions, facades, and manipulations that others hide behind. Like a surgeon who cuts with a blade not to harm, but to remove disease, the dark empath can use their insight to dismantle falsehoods and expose uncomfortable truths. This dual nature gives them power that is rare and unsettling, for they no longer operate within the boundaries of passive kindness, but instead embody a fierce clarity that refuses to be deceived or drained. Shadow empathy does not make them cruel. It makes them whole. By embracing both the light and the darkness within themselves, they become untouchable in ways they never were before. The empath who once existed only to soothe now learns to challenge, to confront, and to awaken others by reflecting not just comfort, but truth. In spirituality and spiritual awakening, this marks the critical passage from naivety to mastery, from unconscious sacrifice to conscious power. They are no longer just mirrors of love, they are mirrors of truth, holding up the reality others often fear to face. And in this confrontation lies transformation, for only by exposing what is hidden can genuine healing and growth occur. Thus, the dark empath stands as both healer and destroyer. Yet their destruction is never for cruelty's sake. It is the breaking apart of illusions so that something stronger, truer, and more aligned with the soul can take root. Jung understood the danger and the gift of such awareness, for to possess both light and shadow is to walk a razor's edge, always aware that intention determines whether one heals or harms. But when the dark empath chooses consciously, guided by wisdom rather than resentment, they embody the highest integration of human potential. They become living proof that real spirituality is not about rejecting the shadow, but about embracing it. Not about escaping pain, but about transforming it into a weapon of clarity and a tool of liberation. In this state, empathy is no longer a burden. It is power, a force that can neither be deceived nor diminished, because it has tasted both the light and the dark and found strength in the union of both. 5. Not evil, but complete. Not evil, but complete. This is the deeper truth of what unfolds when an empath finally integrates their shadow. To many, the idea of embracing darkness suggests cruelty or corruption, but in reality, integration does not turn the empath into a sadist. Instead, it sharpens their vision, and gives them surgical moral clarity, a rare ability to see with precision who must be protected and who must be confronted. You, as an empath, are not destined to be endlessly drained by manipulators or trapped in cycles of self-sacrifice. When you allow your journey of spiritual development to bring both your light and your shadow together, you step into a new strength that makes you both compassionate and unshakable. This clarity does not come from bitterness, but from wisdom. The kind of wisdom Carl Jung described when he warned, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." By confronting what was hidden in your own soul, you no longer act from weakness, but from grounded intelligence and spiritual wisdom. In this state, the empath becomes like a psychological immune system for human consciousness. Just as the body resists infection by strengthening its defenses, you begin to filter out toxicity rather than absorb it. You stop carrying burdens that were never yours to bear, and you learn to recognize deception before it poisons your spirit. No longer do you collapse under the weight of unreciprocated kindness. Instead, you stand as a living shield, protecting yourself and others from those who prey on innocence. Spirituality here is not a retreat into passivity, but a force that transforms awareness into action. True spiritual awakening reveals that compassion without limits is self-destruction, while power without compassion is cruelty, and the integrated empath learns to embody the balance of both. This balance awakens the archetype of the warrior of light within you. Spirituality is no longer confused with endless submission. Instead, it becomes the courage to set boundaries, to honor your worth, and to preserve your peace even if others cannot understand. In this space, your soul's growth no longer depends on pleasing others, but on aligning with truth. And truth, in its raw form, is not always gentle. Sometimes it cuts, sometimes it liberates, but it always heals. When you snap, you do not turn into darkness. You become whole, able to say no without guilt, to release relationships that diminish you, and to walk with strength that is steady, not aggressive. This is the essence of completion, not abandoning love, but refining it into something that is both kind and wise, both open and discerning. The shadow, then, is not your enemy, but your missing half. To deny it is to remain fragile, forever vulnerable to exploitation. To embrace it is to uncover a power that no one can diminish the authority of wholeness. Spiritual development asks for this wholeness, not perfection, because wholeness brings you closer to your authentic self. You are not here to be consumed by the wounds of others, but to transform your own suffering into strength and use that strength for good. In this way, your journey of spirituality and awakening becomes not just personal, but universal. A reminder that when one empath becomes whole, the entire collective consciousness becomes stronger. Wholeness is your true power, and through it, you not only protect yourself, but also safeguard the very spirit of humanity. Leave your like and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And don't forget to activate the notification bell so you won't miss powerful insights like this. Type in the comments, "I embrace my wholeness, not evil, but complete," to affirm your journey of integration. 6. Unprecedented power and responsibility. Carl Jung once warned that the greatest danger comes not from darkness itself, but from the unacknowledged shadow within us. And this truth becomes terrifyingly clear when we speak about the empath who no longer agrees to live only in the light. For too long, empaths have been conditioned to carry pain that was never theirs, to sacrifice their own needs for others, and to be the silent healers of wounds they never created. But Jung understood that such a one-sided existence could never last. When an empath integrates their shadow, they awaken to a higher level of intelligence that transforms them into something society has never been ready for. They begin to perceive hidden motives, subtle manipulations, and the quiet narcissism lurking in ordinary people. And suddenly, they can outmaneuver those who once thrived on exploiting their compassion. This transformation is not corruption. It is power refined through self-awareness, a spiritual wisdom that turns vulnerability into an unstoppable force. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people, Jung once wrote. And it is in this realization that the empath's true strength is born. By embracing both light and shadow, the empath ceases to be only the victim or the savior, and instead becomes a mirror of truth, reflecting back the illusions others would rather keep hidden. People may recoil from such a presence, not because the empath has grown cruel, but because deception no longer works in their company. The integrated empath becomes someone who can strip away the masks, who forces others to confront their own shadows, and who holds accountability where no authority has the courage or capacity to do so. This is a frightening kind of freedom, a spiritual awakening that does not flatter but reveals, that does not soothe but transforms. The responsibility that comes with such clarity is as immense as the power itself. To see through lies, to unveil manipulation, and to hold up the mirror of truth without mercy can be destructive if wielded without compassion. Jung feared this precisely because society often rejects those who can no longer be deceived, preferring to silence them rather than face what they reveal. Yet he also knew that rejecting truth never erases it. It only drives it deeper until it emerges again as an unavoidable event. And so the empath who finally snaps does not descend into darkness. Rather, they reclaim wholeness. They stop being the endless well of sacrifice and become the integrated soul who both heals and demands honesty, who nurtures yet also enforces boundaries. This is the moment of rare transformation, when you, as an empath, are no longer merely absorbing pain, but actively reshaping reality with a kind of spiritual intelligence that no manipulator can twist and no authority can govern. You embody both compassion and strength, both light and shadow. And in that integration lies a power that is unprecedented. This is not vengeance, and it is not cruelty. It is the highest form of spiritual wisdom, a wholeness that society may resist but cannot ignore, because your presence itself becomes a catalyst for truth, awakening, and irreversible change. 7. A new stage of evolution. A new stage of evolution in the empath's journey is not collapse, but completion. A conscious harmony where light and shadow no longer oppose each other, but merge into wholeness. Carl Jung reminded us that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And in this truth, the empath begins to see that their endless giving, their years of carrying suffering that was not theirs, was never the full story of their soul. What arises now is a spiritual awakening in which shadow is not a threat, but a missing half, a force waiting to be integrated so that the empath can step into their true power. The realization comes slowly, like a veil lifting. Compassion without balance had drained them. Boundaries left unspoken had turned into chains, and their silence had been mistaken for weakness. But with awareness, everything changes. The empath discovers that both the power to heal and the potential to harm live within, and what defines the path ahead is how that power is used. If embraced wisely, this shift becomes a leap in human evolution, an ascension of spirituality where pain is transmuted into wisdom and empathy grows into sovereignty. If denied, the shadow erupts, uncontrolled and destructive, dragging them into the very darkness they once tried to escape. Integration is the key to the ability to see oneself not as a victim, but as a vessel of intelligence and spiritual wisdom, capable of carrying both light and shadow with grace. At this stage, empathy transforms into conscious responsibility. Protecting energy is no longer seen as selfishness, but as sacred necessity. Boundaries become bridges, not walls, preserving both spirit and dignity. This is individuation, the process Jung described as becoming whole by weaving together the conscious and the unconscious. Spirituality is revealed not as escape from darkness, but as the courage to walk with it, to turn suffering into strength and silence into clarity. The passage is not gentle. It feels like standing at the cliff's edge, knowing one must either leap or be pushed. Yet within that crisis, the empath finds an untapped fire, a hidden reservoir of strength forged through years of endurance. Sensitivity, once perceived as fragility, is reborn as the very tool of awakening. The shadow anger, exhaustion, resentment no longer binds them, but fuels their courage, transforming pain into power and power into presence. This transformation is not breakdown, but breakthrough. A recognition that every part of the self has value. Light teaches compassion, shadow teaches resilience, and together they form a wholeness that no storm can shatter. The shadow is not here to destroy, but to complete, to remind the empath that spirituality at its highest form is balance, not sacrifice, harmony, not division, truth, not denial. In this integration lies the true evolution of the empath, not just survival, but the conscious choice to live as a complete and awakened soul. Now, close your eyes, breathe deeply, and feel yourself stepping into a new stage of evolution. Calm your mind, embrace your inner strength, and let your spirit expand beyond old limits. Repeat with me. I am evolving into my highest self. 8. The choice of the transformed empath. Once shadow empathy comes alive, there is no turning back to the old innocence, because the moment you sense the hidden layers of human behavior, you carry a responsibility that cannot be ignored. You stand before a choice that Carl Jung called his chilling insight. Whether you will use this psychological power to heal, to protect, and to enforce justice, or whether you will let it twist into indiscriminate destruction. For the empath, this is no longer about being endlessly kind or endlessly forgiving. It is about stepping into maturity, where sensitivity is sharpened into awareness, and awareness becomes the foundation of power. Shadow empathy reveals what lies beneath words, exposing patterns of manipulation, false promises, and unspoken wounds. It offers you the ability to draw boundaries without guilt, to protect without cruelty, and to speak truth even when silence seems easier. And yet, the temptation to use this power destructively always lingers. Because when you have been drained for so long, the hunger to strike back can feel irresistible. This is where spirituality must guide you, not as abstract theory, but as practical alignment. Spirituality becomes the compass that points you toward wholeness rather than fragmentation. And spiritual development is the training that teaches you to hold power without becoming consumed by it. If you choose the path of healing, your first task is to stabilize yourself, for no one can heal others from a place of chaos. You must learn to pause, breathe, and examine your motives with honesty, asking what outcome you truly seek and whether your action will create balance or perpetuate harm. If you choose the path of protection, you must practice the difference between boundary and punishment. Boundaries guard your energy with clarity, while punishment lashes out from unresolved pain. If you feel called to justice, you must remember that justice divorced from conscience becomes vengeance, and vengeance poisons the one who serves it. True justice is proportionate, transparent, and rooted in respect for life, even when it must be firm. This is where your empathy becomes not a weakness, but a force that restores order by refusing to enable deception, chaos, or abuse. To walk this path, you must develop a personal code. Tell the truth without cruelty, help only within healthy limits, disengage when your presence enables harm, and repair swiftly when you fall short. Give your empathy structure through simple rituals that anchor your nervous system, a few quiet minutes each morning, a reflection at day's end, or a weekly check-in where you realign with your values. When anger rises, treat it as a messenger, not a master. Listen to what boundary was crossed and what value was ignored. Then respond with the smallest action that restores balance. When sorrow surfaces, let it release what you no longer need and teach you where forgiveness can open space for growth. And when destructive impulses appear, remember that the same power to end is also the power to edit, to cut away only what harms so that what is good can keep flourishing. The lessons for you are clear. Always choose intention before action, drawing on conscience as your guide. Honor boundaries over punishment, knowing that clarity is kinder than retaliation. Pursue justice with proportion and transparency. Keep daily rituals that ground you. Let anger and sorrow teach rather than control you. And live by a code that keeps your empathy aligned with wisdom. In this way, your journey of spirituality and spiritual development becomes the integration of light and shadow, teaching you that being an empath is not about endless sacrifice, but about becoming whole. Someone who can feel the storm without becoming the storm. Someone whose compassion is matched by courage, and someone whose power serves life rather than destroys it. And so, the chilling truth remains hidden in the shadows. What Carl Jung feared to speak too loudly about is now yours to reflect on. If this message has resonated with you, let it be a reminder that your light and your shadow are both part of your spiritual awakening. To continue this journey of discovery, make sure to like this video, share it with those who may need to hear it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos, where we'll keep exploring the deepest layers of psychology, spirituality, and the wisdom that guides transformation. Carl Jung's secret to energy control. Why most people fail at the first step. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another. Albert Einstein once said, and this truth lies at the heart of Carl Jung's secret to energy control. Every thought, every emotion you allow into your mind becomes the frequency that shapes your life. Yet most people stumble at the very first step, not because they lack power, but because they fail to understand how to direct it. In today's episode of Spiritual Wisdom, we'll explore how to take back control of your energy so you can live with clarity, strength, and purpose. As you listen, I invite you to reflect. How do you currently manage your energy? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your insights might be exactly what someone else needs to hear on their journey of growth and happiness. 1. Vital energy as life force. Each of us carries within a powerful vital energy, called in different traditions prana, chi, ether, or magnetic fluid. And though it may appear abstract, it is never distant. It is the very vitality that makes your body move, the emotion that colors your heart, and the intention that directs your thoughts. To deny its existence is like standing in a flowing river and claiming no water surrounds you. Carl Jung warned, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And this wisdom applies equally to the unseen energy currents that shape every dimension of our lives. The reason so many fail at the first step of energy control is simple. They expect it to be mystical or external when it is already present, pulsing through them in every breath and heartbeat. It is not hidden. It is only ignored. When you wake up weary, when your mind is restless, when you feel inspired, all of it is the movement of energy. This force is not limited to saints or sages. It belongs to you. And the way you direct it determines whether you live in harmony or in chaos. As Einstein reminded us, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another, which means your responsibility is not to find energy, but to transform and channel what already flows within. Awareness is the foundation. Without recognizing how your energy manifests, you will waste it on distractions, negativity, and patterns that exhaust you. Jung showed that unrecognized forces within us lead to projection and conflict, and the same is true for unrecognized energy. It spills into worry, fear, and fatigue. The first act of intelligence and spiritual wisdom is to notice where your vitality goes, what drains it, and what strengthens it. By observing, you begin to reclaim the authority that has always been yours. From that awareness, practice becomes possible. Ancient systems like yoga, qigong, and breathwork are not empty rituals, but tools for aligning body, mind, and spirit. Conscious breathing awakens the current of life within you. Meditation allows you to experience thoughts as waves of energy rather than chains of identity. Stillness is not weakness, but the gateway to awakening. It is in silence that the hidden currents become audible. As Jung observed, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Energy control begins in this turning inward, a recognition that what you seek is already within. Most people fail because they look outward, chasing stimulation, validation, or external power, while neglecting the inexhaustible stream inside. But when you treat your vitality as sacred, when you guard it with care and direct it with intention, you discover that this is the bridge between body, feeling, and thought. Every heartbeat, every emotion, every inspired idea is proof that the force you long for is already yours. Awareness, observation, and alignment, these are the true first steps. Failure is only forgetting, and remembering is always one breath away. Comment below. My vital energy is my life force. If you are ready to master the first step of energy control. 2. Energy in ancient and esoteric traditions. Thinkers such as Franz Barden, Eliphas Levi, and Aleister Crowley often taught that energy is not a vague mystery, but the living thread that binds body, mind, and spirit, and through disciplined will, it can be shaped into form, just as a sculptor shapes marble into beauty. Carl Jung warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And this truth applies directly to energy, for unless you recognize how it flows within you, it will unconsciously guide your choices and outcomes. Energy is not passive. It answers to intention, attention, and spiritual awakening, responding like a mirror to the state of your inner world. Each thought you entertain becomes a spark, each emotion a vibration, and each action a wave you send into the universe, which is why learning to control and direct this force is not optional, but essential for true transformation. Hermetic philosophy reminds us of the principle, as above, so below, teaching that the same invisible laws that govern the stars also flow within the human soul. Ancient Chinese traditions describe this force as qi, a current of life energy traveling through meridians like rivers feeding both body and spirit. Practices such as qigong reveal that with breath, focus, and deliberate movement, you can clear energetic blockages just as debris is cleared from a stream, allowing life force to circulate freely and nourish every dimension of your being. These are not relics of a forgotten past, but timeless blueprints for balance, showing us how to sustain vitality in both the physical and spiritual realms. In modern life, while you may not dedicate hours to ancient exercises, you can still cultivate awareness of how energy shifts with your daily choices, your relationships, and even the digital spaces you immerse yourself in. By noticing how your breath changes in stress, how your posture reflects your state of mind, and how easily negativity drains you, you begin to reclaim mastery over your own current. To grasp this more clearly, think of energy as a kind of currency that you spend with every thought, word, and deed. If you pour it into arguments, worries, or endless distractions, you will quickly find yourself bankrupt, drained before the day is over. But when you consciously invest it into creativity, compassion, mindfulness, and inner strength, you will feel abundant, rich in vitality, and aligned with a deeper purpose. This is what spirituality truly means in daily life, the conscious art of using energy wisely. Spiritual awakening is the moment you shift from scattering energy unconsciously to directing it deliberately, recognizing when fear, anger, or doubt are draining you, and choosing instead to channel that force into actions and practices that uplift your spirit. Energy is therefore both the foundation and the instrument of transformation. The mystics of the past and the psychologists of the modern age converge on this single truth. Your life is a direct reflection of how you master the current within. Neglect it, and you will be carried by forces you cannot control. Cultivate it with awareness and discipline, and you step into harmony with the universal flow where clarity, strength, and higher wisdom naturally emerge. In a world overflowing with noise and distraction, this teaching has never been more urgent. Pay attention to how you use your energy, because it is the most precious resource you possess. Each breath, each thought, and each choice is a chance to strengthen or weaken your inner power. And when you learn to guide it consciously, energy itself becomes the silent ally that shapes a life of balance, spiritual wisdom, and unshakable purpose. Have you ever explored the wisdom of ancient and esoteric traditions to guide your energy? If so, share your experience in the comments below so we can all learn from your journey. If not, comment, "I will begin," and let's take this step into spiritual wisdom together. 3. Balance of body, mind, and spirit. Energy control begins not with force, but with balance, because real mastery of life energy requires harmony between body, mind, and spirit. The body becomes a vessel of strength when you nourish it with mindful breathing, wholesome food, and conscious movement. The mind becomes a sharp lens when guided by disciplined thoughts and clear intentions, able to focus this energy toward meaningful goals. The spirit, the deepest source of energy, awakens when you connect to the essence of life itself, opening a limitless current that flows through everything. Carl Jung pointed out that the path of spirituality and spiritual development is not just about changing how you think, but about becoming whole. And Crowley captured this truth when he defined magic as the art of transforming reality through disciplined will, reminding us that energy control is not wild force, but ordered creation. Breath is the bridge between the visible and the invisible. Every slow, deep breath sends calm to your nervous system and makes your body receptive to higher vibrations. Nutrition is more than fuel. It is the quality of energy you allow into your temple. Movement is more than exercise. It is the art of circulating energy so it never stagnates. Thoughts and intentions, like seeds planted in the soil of your subconscious, eventually shape your outer world. If you dwell on fear or resentment, you feed those realities. But if you cultivate gratitude, clarity, and purpose, your inner frequency shifts and your external life aligns with it. This is why many people fail at the very first step. They attempt to control energy without preparing their body, disciplining their mind, or awakening their spirit. The truth is that you are not divided into separate parts, but are one living system. Neglect the body, and the mind grows restless. Let the mind scatter, and the spirit feels distant. Ignore the spirit, and both body and mind collapse into imbalance. Energy control becomes possible only when you honor all three, for then they work as allies instead of scattered forces. Spirituality teaches us that energy flows where attention goes, and when body, mind, and spirit move in harmony, attention itself becomes powerful enough to reshape reality. Like a river, energy must be guided with strong banks. Without balance, it floods or dries, but with balance, it nourishes everything it touches. The practical lesson is simple yet transformative. Begin with your foundation. Breathe consciously to restore calm. Eat and move in ways that bring vitality. Guard your thoughts like treasures, for they are the architects of your life. Nourish your spirit with meditation, prayer, or silence, because there lies the true well of energy. Jung believed that real spiritual development required courage to face the inner world, and through that courage, the forces within could finally be mastered. When you bring body, mind, and spirit into alignment, energy control ceases to feel like a struggle. It becomes a natural flow, the effortless expression of your wholeness, and the disciplined will that shapes your life into meaning and purpose. Leave your likes and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to activate the notification bell so you won't miss powerful teachings on the balance of body, mind, and spirit. Comment below. I deserve to live a financially prosperous life. And claim this truth for yourself today. 4. Qi and universal connection. Qi is the living breath that sustains you, a force both visible and invisible that binds you to the intelligence of the cosmos and keeps you in constant dialogue with the universe. When this current flows freely, you feel strong, clear, and balanced. But when it is blocked, the result is weakness, disease, and spiritual disconnection. Carl Jung once reminded us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this truth applies directly to energy. Most people fail at the first step of energy control because they try to dominate their energy rather than listen to it, forcing instead of harmonizing, fighting the current instead of sailing with it. Imagine qi as a river. When the water flows without obstruction, it nourishes everything in its path. But when blocked, it stagnates and poisons its surroundings. The same is true for your inner life. Suppressed emotions, unresolved conflicts, and daily tension build dams that slow or even stop the natural flow of your life force. These dams eventually reveal themselves as stress, anxiety, confusion, or physical illness. Energy control begins not with force, but with awareness, the willingness to notice how qi moves, where it flows, and where it does not. It is here that practices like qigong, meditation, yoga, and breathwork become powerful tools, because they help you reconnect to the universal breath, dissolving blockages and awakening vitality. The moment you pause and breathe deeply, you step into this awareness. Each breath becomes more than air. It becomes intelligence, guiding you back to balance and opening the door to spiritual wisdom. Through steady attention, you find clarity of thought, strength of heart, and a quiet resilience that carries you through chaos. This is the essence of spiritual awakening. Discovering that qi is not abstract, but an intimate presence, the very life in your veins. As Jung said, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Looking inside means recognizing that qi is your inner teacher, and when you align with it, you align with the rhythm of creation itself. Energy control is therefore not about domination, but about harmony. You learn to notice the subtle whispers of your body, the hidden knots of your emotions, and the silent currents of your thoughts. You release what no longer serves you, and in doing so, you allow the river of life to flow again. When qi circulates without resistance, you feel whole, creative, and alive, connected to the vast intelligence that animates everything. When you resist, you feel fragmented, drained, and adrift. The choice is always yours, and the secret is simpler than most realize. Breathe, listen, release, and flow. This is how you honor both the wisdom of the ancients and the insights of Carl Jung, awakening to the reality that true energy control begins with awareness and ends with freedom. 5. The role of the mind. The mind is both a magnet and a conductor of universal energy, a living force that pulls into your life the exact experiences that match your thoughts, while also directing how that energy flows and manifests. When the mind is undisciplined, it becomes scattered and chaotic, leaking energy in every direction. But when it is trained with focus and clarity, it acts like a finely tuned instrument, drawing in higher vibrations and channeling them into purposeful creation. Carl Jung emphasized that without mental discipline, external energy control is impossible, because the energy of the universe responds not to wishful thinking, but to the strength and clarity of your inner focus. To think you can bend outer circumstances without first mastering the inner landscape of thought and emotion is like trying to lead an orchestra without ever learning how to play your own instrument. Energy follows thought, and thought follows attention, which means your power lies in where and how you place your focus. If your attention is constantly distracted by noise, fear, or endless digital stimulation, the energy you radiate will be weak and fragmented. But if you cultivate introspection, meditation, and presence, you sharpen your mind into a steady current that channels universal energy with precision. As Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Most people fail at the first step because they ignore this truth, trying to control energy externally while remaining slaves to their unconscious habits internally. In modern life, where constant distractions steal our focus, this teaching is more essential than ever. Every notification, every compulsive thought, every unexamined reaction drains your life force. Spiritual awakening begins when you reclaim that force, when you treat your mind as sacred space and train it to hold attention like a flame in the wind. Athletes, artists, and spiritual masters all know this secret. True mastery does not come from random bursts of effort, but from disciplined focus, cultivated daily. It could be 10 minutes of silence in the morning, mindful breathing, prayer, or journaling. What matters is not the form, but the discipline that strengthens the magnet of the mind and refines the conductor of your energy. When the mind is disciplined, you stop reacting blindly and begin responding with intelligence, direction, and spiritual wisdom. You draw to yourself experiences that align with your higher values, and you direct your energy toward creation instead of chaos. This is why the first step in energy control is always internal, mastering your own mind before reaching outward. Once this step is taken, your thoughts stop working against you and start working for you. The unconscious no longer dictates your path. Instead, you consciously direct your energy into the life you are meant to live. Through this mastery, you discover that your reality is not a product of random fate, but a deliberate expression of your spiritual awakening. And the universe mirrors back the clarity and strength of the energy you hold within. Do you trust in the power of the mind to guide your energy? If you do, declare it boldly in the comments. My mind is strong, and I believe. 6. Foundational practices. Body scanning is far more than a simple relaxation exercise. It is a practice of deep self-awareness that opens the doorway to energy control and spiritual development. By moving your attention slowly through each part of the body, noticing tension, heaviness, or subtle sensations without judgment, you begin to connect with the hidden layers of your energy system. This awareness trains your mind to listen, to observe, and to detect the flow of life force that often remains unconscious. Carl Jung reminded us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Through body scanning, the unconscious patterns of your body begin to rise into consciousness, preparing you to direct your energy with clarity instead of being directed by habits you cannot see. It becomes a foundational discipline where your physical presence and inner awareness align, creating the conditions for energy balance and awakening. Conscious breathing is the next step, and it acts as the living bridge between body and spirit. Deep abdominal breathing grounds you, drawing your awareness to the core of your being, while alternate nostril breathing balances the left and right channels of energy, harmonizing the mind. Both methods awaken the lower dantian, the energetic center where vitality is stored and transformed. When practiced with intention, every inhale becomes an act of receiving new life, and every exhale a release of tension and stagnation. Modern science confirms that mindful breathing calms the nervous system, reduces stress, and improves focus, while ancient traditions have long known it as the key to unlocking energy centers. In spirituality, the breath is sacred. It is not only air, but a rhythm that aligns you with the pulse of life itself. By controlling your breath, you begin to control your mind, and by mastering your mind, you step into freedom from the chaos of external circumstances. The reason most people fail at this very first step is not because the practices are difficult, but because they appear too simple to be taken seriously. Many chase dramatic spiritual experiences while ignoring the basic groundwork that makes such experiences possible. Without awareness of the body and mastery of the breath, energy remains scattered, unfocused, and unstable. It is like attempting to build a towering structure without laying a strong foundation. The higher you go, the more fragile it becomes. These practices are the roots that hold the tree upright. Neglect them, and the tree cannot grow strong. The truth is that the first step is not glamorous, but it is essential, and those who embrace it will find themselves anchored and prepared for every stage of spiritual awakening that follows. The deeper message is that energy is not something external you must acquire. It is already within you, waiting for guidance. Body scanning teaches you to listen to the body's silent signals, to honor the subtle wisdom that your physical form carries. Conscious breathing trains your awareness to move with discipline, teaching you how to release, restore, and realign. When you bring these practices into your daily life, you are not just performing techniques. You are reshaping the way your consciousness engages with existence. They become habits of presence, anchoring you in the only place transformation ever happens at the present moment. Awareness becomes the key, the body the vessel, and the breath the bridge. Through these foundations, you begin to step into true energy control, where spirituality is no longer abstract but lived, where spiritual development is not a distant goal, but a daily unfolding, and where balance, clarity, and awakening become the natural expression of your disciplined practice. 7. Emotions as energy in motion. Emotions are currents of energy in motion that shape the way your life force flows. When you feel joy, love, or gratitude, your energy expands, your mind opens, and your entire being radiates strength and vitality. These emotions are like light breaking through the clouds, lifting you into a higher state of intelligence and connecting you with your spiritual wisdom. But when fear, anger, or sadness dominate, your energy contracts, blocking the natural flow that keeps you alive and vibrant. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists, but grows in size." And this truth reminds you that unprocessed emotions don't disappear. They take root and drain your power. making it harder for you to manifest the life you desire. Emotions are never abstract. They live in the body and spirit. Anxiety weighs on the chest. Anger unsettles the heart. Sadness weakens the immune system. And over time, these energies can even harm your organs. Yet when you cultivate joy, it boosts immunity. When you nurture love, it heals your heart. And when you practice gratitude, it balances your nervous system. Jung explained that ignored emotions become autonomous complexes that control you unconsciously, pulling the strings of your life without your awareness. The real mastery begins when you see emotions not as enemies to fight or suppress, but as raw energy waiting to be guided. The first step of energy control is awareness, but most people fail here. They either bury their emotions deep inside, creating blocks, or let them explode without control, wasting precious power. True mastery comes when you treat every feeling as a tool. Love becomes fuel for creation. Gratitude becomes the frequency of abundance, and even difficult emotions like fear or anger can be redirected. Fear transforms into courage when you recognize its energy urging you to act. Sadness turns into wisdom when you see it as a teacher guiding you to release. Anger sharpens into clarity when you channel it into building stronger boundaries. As Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. By bringing emotions into your awareness, you take back the steering wheel of your own destiny. In today's world, filled with stress, distractions, and endless triggers, this wisdom matters more than ever. If you let outside forces control your emotions, you become reactive, drained, and powerless. But if you build emotional intelligence and learn to transform feelings into energy you can use, you rise above circumstances. This is where spirituality and spiritual awakening come alive in your daily life, not only in silence or meditation, but in every moment you master your emotions instead of being mastered by them. Emotions are energy in motion. They can heal or harm, expand or block, but the choice of how to use them is always yours. Stay connected with our spiritual wisdom community by subscribing to the channel. Here, we explore how emotions are not just feelings, but energy in motion, guiding us toward healing and transformation. Remember, you have the power to turn every emotion into fuel for your spiritual awakening and the abundant life you deserve. 8. Intention and concentration as keys. Intention is the seed that directs your inner force, and concentration is the sunlight that allows that seed to grow into reality. Without concentration, even the strongest intention disperses like water poured into sand, leaving you drained without results. But with concentration, that same energy becomes a river carving its way through mountains. Carl Jung reminded us that the unconscious will rule our lives until we make it conscious, and the practice of focus is exactly how you begin to bring unconscious energy under conscious control. Every thought, every desire you hold is like a spark, but it only becomes a flame when you sustain it with attention. Without that steady flame, your dreams dissolve into smoke, yet with discipline, they solidify into form. In spirituality and in everyday life, this is the first and most overlooked truth of energy control. You cannot harness what you will not focus. When you look at your daily patterns, you can see how this truth operates. Perhaps you start your morning with a clear intention to be productive, but as the hours unfold, your mind scatters into social media feeds, unfinished tasks, or endless worries, and by evening you feel tired but unaccomplished. That exhaustion is not from a lack of energy, but from leaking it in all directions. Spiritual awakening begins the moment you understand that focus is sacred. To focus is to protect your energy from being wasted. Intention without concentration is like sowing seeds on rocky ground, but intention held with steady attention becomes fertile soil where growth is inevitable. Modern science agrees. Wherever you direct repeated focus, your brain strengthens those pathways, rewiring itself to support your chosen reality. Ancient practices such as meditation, yoga, and pranayama were not created as mystical rituals to impress others, but as living tools to discipline and refine the mind. In meditation, when you bring your attention back to the breath after each distraction, you are teaching your mind to return home rather than wander. In yoga, every posture asks you to unite breath, body, and awareness into one channel of energy, revealing the harmony of concentration and motion. In pranayama, the very act of directing the breath shows you that energy responds to conscious control. That calmness and vitality are not random, but cultivated. These disciplines are bridges between intention and manifestation, between thought and reality, reminding you that energy can be guided if you choose to guide it. In your modern life, you can practice the same wisdom without a mat or a meditation hall. When you set aside your phone and give your full attention to a single task, you are already practicing energy control. When you speak an affirmation with clarity and return to it throughout the day, you are reinforcing intention with focus. The culture of multitasking tells you that scattering your energy is efficient. Yet the deeper truth is that power lies in single-pointed attention. As Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Concentration is the key to this transformation because it pulls what is hidden into awareness, giving you the ability to create instead of merely react. Energy follows intention, and intention grows only under the light of concentration. To master this is to master your life. For in the harmony of focused energy lies the path of true spiritual wisdom and awakening. And that brings us to the end of today's journey into Carl Jung's Secret to Energy Control. Why most people fail at the first step. Remember, true mastery of your energy begins with awareness and intentional practice. It is the foundation of spiritual wisdom and personal growth. If this message has inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights that will help you on your path of awakening. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos. Until next time, keep your energy aligned and your spirit strong.